I guess, you know, when we've had so much death in our families, especially over here as well. But, you know, I got to know Bill when he was, oh, quite a while ago.
Mm.
And we often talked about, just last year, in fact, when I went there during canoe pulling time. And one of the concerns I think Bill has always had is that the community doesn't seem to come together as much as it should, especially with the younger people. It's not that the young people are wrong. It's just that I guess we're living in a different kind of communications now. Like we have cell phones and we don't even talk to each other anymore. And that was one of the problems that Bill spoke to me about. You know, we don't see each other. We don't hear each other, in fact, sometimes. And what he was hoping for, you know, and talking in the language. And he was saying that there's really nobody left to visit who can talk fluently with the Lummi language. So every time I went there with him, we'd talk Sinchothan, you know. The Lummi has a different accent in Sinchothan than us over here on the island, but I can understand, you know, the words that are being used. And I hope that, you know, when I was talking to Bill, about a couple of years ago, that the canoe races there, and he was saying, you know, every time we talk about yesterday or about our ancestors, it seems like the children turn us off or they turn off the voice. I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's because of the kind of time we live in now. It's so fast. It's so fast that we can't keep up. And I don't know, we need to keep up. I think we have to go back. I strongly believe sometimes we have to go back and we have to light the fires that were there a long time ago. Until we do that, I think it's going to be continuously a struggle for our young people. So I think, Daryl, you know, we have to remember people like Bill. And there's still some people in your community that really want to say something. You know, I've talked to them when I'm over there, when I went to one of their meetings, and they said, you say a lot of nice things, but does it work? I said, well, sometimes we got to keep pounding at it. My grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they live in a world that's different than the world we grew up in. You know, I used to look out the mountain where I live, just across here, and I can see the trees, yet I can see the sound of the water. Nobody takes time to do that anymore because we got to figure out how can we make money. And that's a huge distraction. We distract ourselves so badly that it becomes the number one priority. I was telling a guy when he was talking to me at the University of Victoria, he said, how did you guys survive during the Depression? And I said, we never had a depression. Yeah, but there was no food, there was nothing. Everybody was broke. I says, we never had money. We used to go down the beach or go out in the forest and get our food. The medicine that the animals eat, that's the same ones we ate. He looked at me, really? And I said, yeah, that's true. So a lot of our medicine today is still in the mountain, still there. So there are many things, Daryl, that I think Bill James knew. And it's not just Bill either. I think you still have some real good old people living in Lummi that have to be listened to. They have to hear the voice of our ancestors. And there are ways to do that. You know, when they buried my cousin today, I was telling them, not just this last time, but almost every time. The most important time of a funeral is when they burn the food and make an offering. Because what they do there then is they invite all of our ancestors back and tell us that we have to do something different. Or they tell us how to be careful. They tell us how to live. They tell us the kind of spirits that we need to pay attention to. It is not to criticize the Christian religion, whether it's Catholic, Anglican, or whatever religion they believe in, but we can make those things work, with Christian people. In fact, when the first missionaries came here, they say they wanted to know about who our God was, and because they didn't know our language, they believed that we were heathens. We had no God except the totem poles and carvings and stuff like that. And the priest said that to me one time. And I said, well, I understand the carving of my family. But in the Catholic Church, you have statues of the Virgin Mary and all the saints that belong to the Catholic Church. I said, are those your gods? No, they're symbols of what our spirituality is about. I said, well, that's the way we are. Our relationship with the land, a relationship with everything, was dependent on our understanding of the wolf, the bear, the killer whale, the sea lion, all these things. There was a relationship there. The bear made it very clear. This is my territory. Don't come here. If you come here, you're going to have a problem. So we learned then the kind of disciplines about thou shalt not trespass. We learned that from the bear. We learned from the wolf how to look after their babies and their children, because they would kill to protect their children. And these are the kind of things, Daryl, that I talked with Bill the time we sat there. He used to talk at Sanchata, and this is what he used to say. Oh, oudens, Chitu, Hudding is the Manganasta. Aux Railsix, the Seatla, Hudding, Twohy, a Stelling of Etlet Clummy. Aunas cheats. As I saw the Hudding attaining it, Hunnaquin, oh, Calculus and all. Sting Hudding watches Hunnaquins, Snisnish Walkwa, look al Salamatun. Hudding watches Hunnaquins, Snisnish Walkwa, the Clucknich, the Stakea, the Collinson, the Mugsting, a Quaitelsta. This is what Bill used to say. All of these things are our relatives. They taught us about family. They taught us about our medicine. So we ate the medicine of the bear and the wolf, the medicine of the eagle, the raven. If you couldn't find what you're looking for, you listen to the raven and you listen to the crow. The crow and the raven are first cousins to each other. The raven is called Skota, and the crow is called Skukwata. It's a small raven. So these are the kind of things that I talked to Bill about when I used to go there and canoe races, and I'd visit him. I used to park my car there. So Daryl, and to those of you today listening to what I'm saying, I think we have to carefully redesign how we can help our children through education. They need to know the modern technology, but it must not become a way of life for them, because then they will become like everybody else. A tree is just a 2x4. A killer whale is something, it's a killer. not in our language. It doesn't say that. It's called Solomon. That's a man, male. Called Solomon Tanat. That's the female killer whale. So every one of these have their own identity, and we haven't paid attention to that. We start to think like everybody else, and that's not helping us, you know. So Daryl, and to those of you, thank you for listening to me for a while this evening. But I hope sometime when the border becomes open, we can spend some time together, and each one of us can listen to some of the history of our indigenous people. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and your words will be shared with the people here in the next few days. So thank you.
Yeah. Ts'il'ixw. I see you sometime. Maybe things get better. Hayekwa.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to call forward Father Patrick Twohy, who's been asked to be honorary pallbearer. Unfortunately, he's on house arrest down there at Seattle U, so we can't make it. And Father, if you want to step forward and maybe offer a little prayer to the people, as well as some good words about our loved one here in the family.
CM. First of all, I wanted to thank Tom for the beautiful words. I always look forward to hearing his teachings and teachings of his people. I'm just grateful tonight we could be together as one people, and we're all grieving together. And I get phone calls today from up there at Lummi, and people are all grieving. And it's no wonder we're grieving because of the strength and goodness of this man. And we know it's going to be a big absence now for the people. It's worth many tears. I had many tears. So I'd like to honor Bill the best I can. I remember the day he accepted the role at a big gathering in the old gym, and he accepted this role to be chief of his people. And he did it so nobly, so beautifully, so humbly. But he stepped up into the role very powerfully, very powerfully. And he became an example for his people. He knew that was his role. They talk about way before Indian Reorganization Act and all that, when the head men, the elders of the community, the ones people respected most, were the teachers and helped the people with decisions in all the villages. And they were honored for their wisdom and the depth of spirit, all their spiritual gifts. Well, I think Bill stepped right into that role. He knew he had a role to fulfill among his people, to be an honorable man, to be just and kind, and to encourage his people back to the original life ways, which are sacred and beautiful, and to help them say the language, speak the language again. He gave himself so unselfishly for the people. And he was an artist. He had a great heart and mind. And he was a beautiful artist in wool and cedar. And he shared everything he knew, from going to get the cedar in the woods and all it takes to do cedar work or working with wool. And he was so generous with his knowledge, willing to teach anyone who came to him. I'll always remember him for his goodness. I remember seeing him after his mom died, and he was a broken man. But he wasn't broken altogether. He came back, and because he had more work to do among the people. And he was a perfect example of this way of life, this beautiful way of life of the Lummi people. I just wanted to say these things that he now moves on and he'll be well received. Siab, Siam, Hek Siam. He comes to the world, to next world, and he comes as an honorable man who lived a beautiful life. And so as we grieve, I know there's great honor and joy as he's now received by his relatives. I'll never forget Bill. He's the one that I remember that showed me what being a respected elder, to be a chief, what that really means. It means your own life is not yours anymore. Your life is for the people. And like Tom said, I know there were the lonely times, more than I know. But he was so deep, he never gave up on what was asked of him. And so I wish him peace now, Bill. Yeah, a lot of peace and a lot of joy. And I know you hold the people in your prayers always. Siam and Siaya. Thank you. Haiska.
Good words. Thank you so much. These words will be shared with the people. We move forward in this this way of being together. This time, I'd like to call forward Jay Julius, who worked with the chief on so many big issues at this moment in time, and protection of our sacred sites and protection of all living things. And I'd like to have Jay share a little bit about that now, his most recent work with leadership at the Lummi Nation. The chief always was supportive of, and somebody that we could always look to for advice in the ways of our government and the ways of protecting the environment. So I just wanted Jay to say something about that, share a few words, some stories about those most recent times. Jay?
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you to the speakers and all those great stories and words and messages from the heart about our late leader, our chief, now a great ancestor. You know, I'm taken back to actually childhood with Aunt Fran and Bill, and Nancy Solomon Lane and Vernon Lane were my grandparents. So through childhood, I got to spend a lot of time with them in different places and at different times. And whether it was doing the cultural things, digging horse clams, or collecting seagull eggs, or just a bunch of great things of the past, that's when it really started for me. But in some recent conversations with Ts'il'ixw, he reminded me and Ted Solomon that we were his first language students down at the Marietta, the old tribal school, in the early 90s. And I remember that. We all were much younger then, but they were great times. And then secondly, what is important for myself, and I think so many here today, is during a naming process, my grandma Nancy decided that it was time for names, and she held a naming in her front yard of Grandpa Vernon and Nancy's home on Lummi Shore Road. And the chief was there, his mother, Aunt Fran. I recall Al Scott and Aunt Lutie, Uncle Smitty, Sharon Kinley, you know, just to name a few really critical, important folks at that gathering that my grandparents looked to for that important process in our cultural life and our names. And my mother, her twin, Tina, and the grandchildren got names that day. And that was special with Chief Ts'il'ixw and my family. And but moving into 2011, we got elected to council, Daryl Hilaire, myself, Tim Ballou, Jr. We were immediately, we immediately learned about the coal port proposed at Cherry Point. Cliff Colty was chairman, Candy Wilson was vice chair, Cheryl Sanders was treasurer, and Levi Jefferson was the secretary at the time. And I remember the chief creating a pivotal moment in time for that whole process. He said, "This is the home of the ancient ones." And he shared a story of walking on the beach with his Oksala, Mr. Charles, and the direct orders that were given to him to protect this place. This is the home of the ancient ones. You protect this place. It is your responsibility to protect this place. And once that was said, the people moved, the people spoke. And it was just the pivotal moment in time where everything changed, which led to, as many of us remember, honoring the ancestors, from Chief Ts'il'ixw's words, from his Oksala, and sharing those important teachings with the council led to honoring the ancestors. And many of us remember honoring the ancestors that very day. There was a mock check burnt that basically said, our treaty rights and our cultural sites are not for sale, not even millions and millions. And that's important because a lot of that work that he did, he was so humble, yet so courageous and so powerful. His words were so strong and carried a lot of weight. And what I learned from him in that moment in time was what he learned from his Oksala and the importance of honoring those teachings and those words. And then a little bit later on, council had asked the chief if he would sit with the colonel of the Army Corps of Engineers who would make the ultimate decision. The chief, to my knowledge, while I was there, never turned down any of this work. Never once do I recall him ever, no matter what he was doing, this was important work. So he did. And we thought we were going to be able to be a part of that conversation, but he took the colonel and walked down the beach like he did with his Oksala. And we were a distance away and we saw him and he sat him on a log and he shared with them, I'm sure, that same story of what this place was, home of the ancient ones. He talked about pre-contact, pre-treaty, in that 2500 BC, we've been here since time immemorial. This is sacred land. And he tried to create that empathy, I'm sure, in the story. But what was most amazing to me while talking to the colonel on that log was the fact that there were 2 eagles circling above him high in the sky the entire time, 15 to 20 minutes. Many witnesses there on the beach, and we were all just in awe, directly above him and the colonel, circling the whole time. It was one of the most amazing moments in time for me. And, you know, the chief, Bill, he was just a chief of peace, a chief of compassion, a chief of courage, charismatic, a funny chief. He made everyone laugh, but he got the important messages across. He didn't let the humor dilute what was important for our nation, for history and what his Oksala taught him. And for that, I am forever in debt to carry on what he has taught me and shared with me. Just, as we mourn, I know the last few words over the last 5 days, he always had something to say to me in the evening. And up until the night before he went home, he made us laugh. My last moment with us, with him, he made us laugh very hard. All of those in the room, Al Scott, Gertie, Michael, and many others, just making us laugh. And he shared with me to be happy and do what makes you happy and go where you're happy, and just always encouraging you to be happy, to be strong, and just forever grateful for this man, now an ancestor, a leader. And as we've heard before, it's not our job to fill the boots of the past leaders. We have to fill our own. We have been taught by our Oksalas, by our teachers, by our elders, by our past leaders, by example, how to lead. And I'm thankful to the chief for his example, for his charismatic, humorous leadership style. Haishka, to each and every one of you, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call forward now our dear friend from Seattle, Lynda Mapes. Looks like you have your wonderful husband with you, Doug. Hello, Doug. But Lynda, at this time, we'd like you to step forward, maybe offer a few memories, a few good words about the chief, Ts'il'ixw. And I remember you were real close to his mother also, Aunt Fran. So floor is yours.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you to everyone for your words tonight. And it's such a comfort to be with you, to see your faces, to see your names. So many of you here tonight are people who have been friends and teachers and collaborators with me in the work I do at the Seattle Times now for decades. And I can't do this work without you. And I'm so, my heart is breaking. I will say that to you. My heart is breaking tonight. And I want to hold up something beautiful for you. This is, of course, one of Bill and Fran's blankets. Over the time that I was fortunate to know them both, I would go up to Lummi with a hopeful heart that maybe they'd made something that I could purchase to have in my house. And there are beautiful blankets in the house. And as I wrote Bill's obituary today, I had one of his baskets on my desk. I have spent the last several days talking, in fact, to many of you and others about Ts'il'ixw. And it's been an incredible honor to write his obituary, which will be on the front page of the Seattle Times tomorrow. Someone asked me how I felt today, and I said, well, it's actually been a very joyful time because I've been able to spend these several days listening to people talk about the life of this remarkable man he was such a leader and so important in so many ways. I was speaking to curators of museums. I was speaking to world-renowned anthropologists, the governor of our state, to tribal leaders around the region, to elders at Lummi. And the fact is that Bill James was a giant in so many ways. He and Aunt Fran single-handedly kept weaving alive in Washington State in the 1960s. There were only a few clusters of people, some across the border and some in Washington State, who were keeping this very endangered art form alive. And if it were not for them, this renaissance that we now see where, the dress of dignitaries at any important Coast Salish gathering is something made by Aunt Fran or Bill James, this beautiful renaissance of weaving, both of cedar and wool, they did that. And you would think that would be enough for one lifetime. But no, he also, with such commitment and from early age, spent his time with elders to learn. He had such a thirst for their knowledge and what they had to give. And as you all know, he was selected early in life by age 16 and groomed for the role of the next hereditary chief. And he took that very seriously, and from early age began preparing himself such that, you know, by the time he stepped into that role, he was able to teach anyone who came to learn who they are and where they came from, because he knew the genealogy, and he learned the language, and he had the protocol, and he knew the ceremonies, and he, in that way, was able to engage even beyond the reservation into some of the greatest fights of our generation on behalf of the Ts'il'ixw, on behalf of the ancient ones at Cherry Point. And, you know, where many would speak of these things as environmental issues or land use, when he spoke of them, they were about, his words were on a higher moral plane. They were about defending the Shalangan, the way of life of the Lummi people. They were about the sovereignty of the Lummi people, and also of the other beings with whom you have always shared the Salish Sea. And so he elevated not only the conversation, but all of us to think about this place and to think about the ones who came before, the ancestors, the Ts'il'ixw, to recognize our tiny little place within this much larger continuum. And he did that, and he did it with elegance and dignity. And because he did it that way, he called it forth in us. He made us better people just because we got to listen to him. I have just a few stories that I want to share about being with him and being with Aunt Fran. I have this great memory of the two of them backing out of the driveway in the PT Cruiser with their tunes cranked up, and all kinds of beautiful, precious things, heading off to a weaver's gathering to show the beautiful things they'd made and to share the joy of being with friends and making new friends. They were each always so eager to teach and to learn. And the sight of the two of them in the PT Cruiser for me was just a happy and joyful thing. And I want to share another thing, which is that he had a request for his service, and that quest says so much about him to me. You know, he never missed a single performance of the Lummi Nation School Black Hawk Singers, the K through 12 student performers and graduates who would even come back to perform with them because, you know, they really wanted to perform the songs. He never missed one of those performances, and his request for his day tomorrow was that the Black Hawk Singers sing for him. And the thing is, you know, he loved to sit in his chair by the window and watch the kids go to school. And it meant so much to him when he would hear them sing in the Lummi language, and to know that all of his work was worthwhile. And so with that, I just want to say thank you. It drives my tears to be with you all tonight. And thank you for this time together. And my husband, Doug, I know wants to add some words.
I do. First, to thank the speakers. Lynda has had a deep connection with Aunt Fran and Bill for many years, and I've had the honor of being a witness to that and observing it and being a part of it from time to time. I remember being with them all and some of you at Portage Island. I remember at Astamish when we sat on Bill James's porch. Daryl, I think you were there, and we all shared strawberries in the midst of a hot day. And I remember that Lynda would, from time to time, in fact, come back from Lummi was something that she had purchased from Aunt Fran and from Bill, that the sorts of things that fill our house with a richness of culture and people and of memory. I also remember that some of the smallest and most wonderful things in our house were not things she purchased from Bill and Fran, but small things, a small basket or two that Bill gifted to Lynda, wholly as a gift of love and sharing. And as beautiful as all the wonderful works of art that we live with from Aunt Fran and Bill, I think those small baskets in their way are the most beautiful of all, because of the meaning that they convey of gifting and sharing and love. Well, if you think that Lynda's work is simple or easy, just because she does it so well, I can promise you, as somebody who watches the effort and anguish of it, that sometimes it's horribly, horribly hard. And she faces discouragement and challenge, just like all of us do. Even those of us who, when we seem to be successful at something, the price or the effort that we pay to have achieved what we project to people is often hides how much effort it is to us from within. And that would be true of Lynda. Some time ago, when Ts'il'ixw, as Tom Sampson was referring to, was carrying her calf with full of messages for all kinds of meanings and for all kinds of people, for the community of her family and for communities who watched, Lynda was almost exhausted by the effort and the emotion. And she, I think at some point in the course of that and other instances, Bill had said, Lynda, you have been called to do the work. Well, I've learned in Indian country, and I've been particularly tutored by Daryl over some decades now, that the work is a special word and a special idea. And it has a meaning which is not the meaning that we white people think when we talk about going to work. It's a different and deeper and more spiritual and profound calling. And Lynda, and Lynda, when Lynda has a rough moment, I say to Lynda, this is not because it's hard. It's because Bill James has told you, you must do the work. And I have used that many times and quoted Bill James as its origin to push Lynda forward. And when I hear the words, from the wonderful words that people share on an occasion like today, I realize that inspiration to do the work is what Bill has brought to so many people, including people we will never know. And when I see how it has fallen on someone like Lynda, I realize that his influence and his commitment to the work has gone far, far beyond Lummi, or far, far beyond relatives in other tribes or in other communities, far outside of Indian country, and touches the world. And I think that is an unbelievable testament to a chief, and something that I'll always remember. And I'm grateful to have the floor for a few moments to share those thoughts. And I'm honored to be in the company of some of the other speakers for whom I've had boundless respect for many years. I know others will speak wonderfully on the floor too. Aichka.
Thank you, Lynda. Thank you, Doug, for your good words. And we'll be sure to share this with the people as we make this this story told via technology. this time we'd like to call forward Dr. Dakota Lane, who wanted to offer a few words from his time and his work for all of us, and particular his work with our late relative. So, Dakota?
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you to all those who have spoke. All of your stories, your thoughtfulness and wisdom, and all of your stories of Bill James really just completes a picture that I think we've all felt in our heart. My story with Bill James starts a little later in my life. It starts in 2003, October 2003. And Jay Julius highlighted already how much he was involved with. Both Jay and I share the same grandparents, Vernon and Nancy Lane. And in 2003, in October, I was selected to go to Malawi, Africa, as a Peace Corps volunteer and a teacher. And my grandpa looks at me, my whole family, and grandma and grandpa, and they realize I didn't have an Indian name. And how can I be going off to those countries without the protection of our community, without the protection of our ancestors? And guess who was there? Chief Bill James. Always humble, always present with reassurance. He had such a reassuring presence, and that was really my first chance I really got to know him, because he helped, and my grandparents pick my name. Mamusia is what they gave me. And I didn't really understand. I always knew I wanted an Indian name, and I always asked my dad and my mom how I could get it, and even growing up. But at that time, I was 23. And so I was so proud to carry that with me to Malawi, Africa, to be a teacher, to serve. And then during those 2 years, you have a lot of time thinking. A lot of you, some of you don't know Peace Corps. You work for 2 years in Africa, and you get to spend time serving the community as best you can. Many of the Africans over there, the Malawians is where I was, had very similar tribal community. Everybody knows everybody. And I've always felt that the Indian name, and coming from Lummi, and the close family, and how everybody knows everything about everybody, I really thrived over there because of all the teachings and the family and the community that Lummi provided for me. Then I went to med school. I became a doctor. And in between those times, after Africa, I came back, would always come visit, would see grandma and grandpa, would see my family. But they were always in short visits, and all our family gatherings. Chief Bill James was there with his, who would provide good words and continue to encourage me to go to school. Then I got my degree, and I came back, and always with the intention of serving Lummi, serving my community. So at one point, I was, fresh out of residency and a fresh doctor in 2016, and I was starting to see patients and our community members, and in walks Chief Bill James. And as I was just so happy to hear Tom Sampson. That's the first time I really got a chance to listen to him speak, and he mentioned technology. And at this point, technology really played exactly the same role that Tom Sampson talked about. So I have a computer, we have an electronic health record, and I don't know if you can see me on the computer, but I was looking at it, okay, how can I help you today? And I'm sitting there typing, not really making good eye contact, not paying attention. Oh, okay, I can help you with that. Okay, well, tell me more about that. And any fevers, chills, cough. And then he looks at me and he goes, Mamusia, I will tell you more, but you need to learn to listen and you need to close that laptop. And looked up, slowly closed my laptop, put it to the side, and then he looked at me and he said, you have to be careful with technology because you're not listening. And that was probably within the first couple of weeks of me being a doctor out at Lummi. And I think it really set the tone, even though I'm from the community. I think it showed to me how to properly listen and see a human being. I went through years of med school, residency, etc. But that changed how I became, it changed everything. And I'm so grateful for that. Then over the next couple of years, he was always just a reassuring, I'd see him both as a patient out in the community, and he'd always say, how you doing, Dr. Lane? How you doing, Mamusia? I hope you're doing all right, because I know you're carrying the weight of the community on your shoulders. And if you ever need someone to talk to, come talk to me. And I took him up on that, and for a lot of times he lifted the weight. And that's why it's so hard to at least lose some of that. And that's why it comes back to my Indian name. Just like he provided the foundations for the Black Hawk Singers, provided guidance for fighting for treaty rights, he provided the foundation. He also set the stage for the foundation for me to properly care for the Lummi community. And with my Indian name, he's reminding me that our ancestors are always here, and that he's here today, and he will always be there with his words. And his words are living through all of these stories that I'm hearing, and I just am so grateful for the leadership and the foundation that he provided for me and the rest of the community. Thank you, Daryl, and thank you to all of those who have spoke. Aishka.
Thank you, Dr. Lane, and we'll be sure to share these words with the people as we move forward with this work, gathering all of the memories and feelings from the people and sharing it in a presentation that will be provided tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We'll be doing the live stream of some of the services tomorrow for people that live in other communities across the border, other parts of the country. They'll be able to hear these things said about the late chief. So thank you. And speaking of the border and speaking of our good friends, our good relatives, I'd like to welcome Stephen and Gwen Point to the floor, if you will. And we've been calling forth speakers throughout the evening to share in their memories of our dear relative. And we'll be sure to try to include all of this in this presentation. So now you're next. So good to see both of you. Looks like you got sunshine there, or what is that in the background there? But
It's
I'm glad.
it's artificial light. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So good to see you, and it's your turn to share. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Daryl, for organizing this. And it, at a time like this, you know, Aboriginal people come together and we try to be together to support the family and the community that is in sorrow. And I've never seen in my life or ever thought we'd be going through the kind of pandemic that we're facing right now. And it's just preventing so many of our cultural activities from continuing, especially when we try to come together to assist a community and a family in sorrow. We want to be there. We want to be with you, and then we cannot do that, and it's difficult. When I first met Bill, of course, him and Fran were doing a lot of work in Cedar Bark. Gwen was doing a lot of work in Cedar Bark, and we found out that they would give you a lesson or classes if we wanted to learn how to do working in Cedar Bark. And so Gwen was the first one that took a class from them, and she met Fran, and she told me what a wonderful, wonderful person she was, and what a wonderful person Bill was. And so her and I both took a class from her. Always stayed with them all day to learn how to make a cedar hat. They didn't say this is how much it was going to cost. They didn't say, oh, we don't have any money for food. They just made lunch for us. We were guests in their home for a whole day, and we both made a cedar hat with them. But as most of you know who know Bill and Fran and visiting them, when you go into their home, it's like this warm, amazing, welcoming feeling. Individuals and cultural groups share values, and part of those values include sharing and humility and kindness and honesty, and that's what you felt when you were with Bill and with Fran. It was just amazing to be with them, and you didn't want to leave. You wanted to stay there with them. And people would come and go, and council members would come, and they'd want Bill's advice on something. People were coming and going, and constantly helping Bill and helping Fran and serving them. And I was amazed by that. I was amazed how the community looked after their chief and looked after Fran. There was this tremendous rapport and protocol that existed that you don't see anywhere else. I haven't seen that, where a community takes their elders and their leadership in hand and say, no, we're going to look after you now. And that's what Lummi was doing for Bill as their chief. He told me about through lengthy discussions we'd have about how he became a chief and how the selection process goes and how the meetings have to happen and how they're very careful to select somebody that's just right for the people. And after you get to know Bill and Fran, you realize, my goodness, did they ever make a wonderful choice for leadership. I think often leadership is loud, often leadership is arrogant, sometimes it's condescending. And those are none of the qualities that Indigenous leaders employ, but we see that in other forms of leadership. And Bill was unassuming. He didn't put himself above other people. He was very quiet. He spoke his truth quietly. And that kind of strength, that kind of inner power does not exist. It's a very rare quality in my view. And I enjoyed my time with him and with Fran. It's a sad thing when we lose anyone, of course, anybody in the family, it's difficult. I think it's doubly difficult when a community loses its heartbeat, loses the central soul of the community embodied in a wonderful person like Bill. During Stormish, I used to try to get in to see him. There was just too many people coming and going and wanted a few minutes with the chief. And so, and he would graciously receive people just like any diplomatic leader around the world. He would give you a chair, bring you tea, and people would leave gifts for him. And he played the role that was given to him in an honorable way and represented the Lummi people in an honorable fashion. And for that, I think he's a great loss to the community. But I want to extend my condolences to the family. I know there's a big family there in Lummi. And my condolences to the community as well. I want you to know that our thoughts and our prayers are with you, that we stand with you in this time of sorrow and grief. And I hope that you take a few moments, though, to celebrate Bill's life, to celebrate the things that he taught people, to celebrate the gifts that he had, that he shared so readily with everyone, and to celebrate the fact that him and his mother now rejoined. What a wonderful team they were. And as much as we must grieve the loss of a dear one like Bill, the balancing part of that is the realization that he's gone home and he's in good hands now. I'm sure they're rejoicing on the other side and making a place ready for him and getting him ready for his big day. And I can see Bill quietly smiling and going, "Oh, don't fuss over me now." And I am going to miss Bill. I'm going to miss his kindness. I'm going to miss his friendship. I'm going to miss his wisdom and his guidance that he offered, and his hospitality the most. Whenever he seen us, he smiled. He was happy, and he'd be in pain in the hospital. He would be gracious, and he'd want to make us comfortable. We were trying to see him at the hospital. So it's sad to see him go. On the other hand, it's his time now. I guess he's done his job. He's paid his dues, and now he's earned a wonderful rest, I think. So I'm happy for him at the same time. And thank you, Daryl, for including us. It's great to see you, Father Twohy. It's lovely to see you. It's great to see all of you, of course, on the screens here. And once again, just our prayers and thoughts to all of you, especially the family.
Hey, Daryl, Father Twohy, and my glasses aren't that good, so we just caught the last part of the Dr. Lane, I believe. I really appreciate this, Daryl. And wasn't that long ago we were talking about technology and not too supportive of technology, but it's serving us well. It's serving us well, especially at a time like this. I really want to say to all those that took care of Bill this last while. We were getting messages from, I was trying to find her name, the one that was taking care of Bill. And she was messaging us. And one time she messaged, she said, he won't take his medication. And I told her, okay, I'm waiting for Stephen when he gets here. And so we called and she put us on speakerphone. And the doctor was there, I believe. And so we talked to him a little bit. And then lo and behold, he said, the doctor just put the medication in my mouth. But, you know, through the last little while, he was struggling. He was struggling. And we know that he's not anymore. So my hands really go up to those ones that took care of him. I always tell people it's like having a good luck coin in your pocket now. And we know what that feels like at this time, not being able to come together as a family and as a community. But we also know Father Twohy, the Spirit, doesn't know distance. The Spirit doesn't know time. And I remember being with my daughter who needed prayers at one time. And when he could see all these lights coming down, the lights were coming down. And I realized it was the prayers that were coming in. And so we're sending prayers. We're sending prayers for the family. We're sending prayers for the community at this time. And we're sending lots of love and asking for the Creator's blessing on each one of you, especially for those that have worked with Bill the last few months. And also prayers for our dear elder. And I just remember at one of our funerals this last year, one of the speakers that stood up and said, he's our angel now. He's our angel now. He'll be looking over us now. And I'm going to hang on to, I thank Stephen for mentioning all that Bill shared with us. So free with his teaching. He was so giving. And I can just imagine him being with his mom, his parents. And that's what I'm going to hang on to. And all that he taught us, we're going to turn around and teach someone else, God willing, with the same love and kindness that he showed us. So Ts'il'ixw, asking everyone to stay safe, asking special prayers for each one of you as well, and the last little while before he travels home. I'd
like to thank everybody for being on tonight and sharing these good thoughts and good feelings. And as we close, Steve and Gwen, special prayers to Al Scott Johnny, who is following the instructions and giving directions to all of us in this work. Bill and left a lot of notes and a lot of instructions, and we're doing the best we can. you know, and but especially Al, who's sitting in that chair now, the one that Bill used to sit in. And I seen him yesterday, and it reminded me that meant a lot to be there, welcoming the people in and making them feel like they're part of the family. So if we could have that at this time, then we'll close for today, and then I'll get with Al and the rest of the folks and how we're going to provide these words to the rest of the people. So, Aishka.
All right, we'll just close with a prayer then, and everything that we do, we acknowledge the Creator, the GCM, and the prayer is the way that we connect with the Creator. So I'll ask you all to pray in your own way and in your own heart. Hey, Grandfather, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for all the wonderful words that have been spoken about our dear brother, our dear friend who's going home. Grandfather, we give you thanks for the elders that are in this circle with us right now, helping us and guiding us in our thoughts and our words. Grandfather, we ask for a special blessing on the family and the community at Lummi, but especially for Al Scott Johnny, our dear brother, who's carrying the weight now for the services and carrying out the wishes of our dear brother. We ask for strength and wisdom for Daryl and Father Twohy. My dear elder Tom Sampson, ask you, Grandfather, to bring down a blessing on all of those who contributed this evening. Continue to add support to the family in this time of sorrow. Grandfather, lift up our hearts so that we feel strong and that we feel good inside, to realize that death is just a passing. It's not the end. We all wait to one day to see our Creator again. And at that time, we'll see our dear brother again. Aho, Grandfather, aho, amen, amen.